What if some coincidences happen exactly at the right time? An invisible force in a store, strange figures in the sky, a light near a baby crib, shadows on the road, and signs that people noticed only after watching the recording. In this episode, real viral stories that some explain by glare, editing, and camera errors, and others call a miracle. We will not blindly believe every frame, but let us look closely. Where is an ordinary coincidence, and where is something that makes you feel uneasy? In one Mexican village, a man was going through a difficult period. According to his words, he was no longer asking for money, luck, or the resolution of all his problems. He asked only for a sign, just anything that would make him believe he is being heard. In the evening, he went outside and noticed a flash above the horizon. At first, it could have been taken for a bird, a drone, or a reflection of light, but the movement was too smooth and the silhouette too expressive. A light figure stretched upwards and two wide shapes on the sides resembling wings. He managed to record only a few seconds, but that was enough for the video to spread among the neighbors and then across social networks. Skeptics saw an optical effect in it. The author himself spoke of something else. He asked for a sign almost in a whisper, raised his head, and saw what he could no longer call an ordinary cloud. In the United States, a man shared a recording from a camera at his house. Near the porch, a large glowing orb appears and moves in a strange trajectory. It does not look like an ordinary speck of dust that quickly flies past the lens, and it does not blink like an insect near infrared illumination. The story became personal because of the context. The author had recently lost his mother and was in a state where any detail could become a sign. Therefore, he perceived the light near the house not as a technical defect, but as a visit, a short "I am near" from a place where you cannot call. The next day, according to his words, he met a person who helped him survive an acute moment of grief. The coincidence can be interpreted in any way, but such videos rarely convince everyone. Their power lies elsewhere. Sometimes one strange light does not change the world, but it helps one person to hold on for one more day. At night, a woman was driving along the road and noticed an unusual glow ahead. She stopped, got out with her phone, and saw a dove. The bird sat almost motionless, but looked as if it were radiating a soft light itself. The author came closer, asked the same question aloud. "What kind of bird is this?" The dove did not fly away, did not thrash about, and did not behave frightened. On an empty night road, this calmness looked almost unnatural. Viewers quickly came up with earthly versions: reflection of headlights, white plumage, illness, paint, retro-reflective material. But the symbolism made the video stronger than any expertise. A white dove for many is connected with the Holy Spirit, peace, and protection. And if such a bird stops you at night in the middle of the road, it is very difficult not to think, maybe you were delayed for a reason. During a church service, a white bird flew into the room. Usually, birds in buildings rush around, hit the glass, and look for a way out. But this dove flew calmly, as if it knew where it was heading, and landed right on the head of a statue of Jesus. The hall became quieter. People did not rush to drive it away, did not start making noise, but simply watched. Sometimes a symbol works exactly like this. It explains nothing to anyone, but it makes everyone stop for a few seconds. The bird could have flown in from an open door, chosen a high point, and landed where it was convenient. But in a church space, a convenient point turns out to be the image of Christ. And the white dove is one of the most recognizable religious symbols. Therefore, the incident turns into a scene that the parishioners remember as a blessing. In the sky over Ukraine, according to eyewitness accounts, a cloud appeared that resembled an angel. Against the background of alarming events, such frames quickly receive a special meaning. People look not only at the shape in the sky, they look for hope. The silhouette looked like a light figure with open wings. Some saw a sign of protection, others saw a coincidence of clouds and light. But it is understandable why the video went viral. When there is a lot of pain around, even a cloud can become an image that tells a person that they are not alone. A night camera filmed a figure on an empty street. At first, it is an ordinary passerby, but then it becomes clear. The light around him is too strange. The contours seem to be illuminated from the inside, and the movement looks smoother than that of an ordinary person. The author could not confidently say whether it was a person, a reflection of headlights, or a glitch of night filming. Night cameras often distort reality. They stretch the light, turn insects into orbs, and passers-by into silhouettes. During a mass, the camera was directed at a statue. People were praying, the priest continued the service, and no one expected anything unusual. But later, on the recording, they noticed a movement. The hand of the statue seemed to slightly change its position. The movement was small, almost on the borderline of perception. That is why it is disturbing. There are many versions: camera shake, a shadow, perspective, editing. But for the parishioners, the moment was important. During the prayer, the image to which the gazes were directed seemed to answer with a barely noticeable gesture. This video looks especially strange. A camera films a sleeping person. The room is dark and quiet, but then a dark shape appears near the body, as if a shadow separates from the sleeper and slowly moves to the side. For a few seconds, it seems that something separate has come out of the person. Then the shape disappears and the sleeper remains motionless, as if he felt nothing. Explanations are possible: light from the window, movement off screen, video compression, overlapping shadows. But the image turned out to be too strong for calm viewing. A camera near the road films the flow of cars and a person crossing the roadway. At first glance, this is just a dangerous crossing, but the closer you look, the stranger the behavior of the cars is. They do not brake, do not drive around, do not honk, as if there is no one in front of them. The figure also looks unusual, not like an ordinary passerby, but like a dark contour, flat and too even for a living person. In local retellings, such frames quickly become overgrown with a legend. They recall old accidents, dead pedestrians, the road where sometimes someone appears. The technical explanation can be simple: camera quality, dark clothing, perspective, overlapping frames. But why did all the cars behave as if there was not an obstacle on the road, but an empty space? On the 4th of April 2020, according to the captions to the videos, residents of Sao Paulo noticed a cloud in the sky resembling a huge rider. The date is important. The world lived in anxiety. People especially clung to any symbols, and the figure in the sky quickly received a religious reading. From below, it looked like a silhouette on a horse, an elongated upper part, a light body, the movement of clouds around. Someone saw in this the image of Christ on a white horse. Someone saw an ordinary play of wind and humidity. Later, another video began to be attached to the story, already with a dark rider at the shoreline, although the connection between the videos is not obvious. In Colorado, as the author of the video told, she had been praying for a personal sign for a long time. Not for a miracle for the news and not for proof for strangers, just for something that she would understand herself. And one day, driving along the highway with her husband, she saw an unusual cloud above the horizon. The shape was like a tall human figure. Above the upper part, a section of the sky glowed, which made the silhouette resemble an image with a halo. The woman stopped the car and started filming because she was afraid that in a minute the shape would fall apart. A skeptic will call it pareidolia and will have the right to do so. But for the woman herself, the important thing was not to convince the skeptic, but to feel that her internal question had not dissolved into emptiness. In Rio de Janeiro, a local resident was filming Mount Corcovado and the statue of Christ the Redeemer. The panorama itself is strong: the city below, the monument with outstretched arms, the sky above it. But the author's attention was drawn to a glow that appeared above the statue. The light seemed to rise up and dissolve in the air. When zoomed in, the author claimed that a human figure could be distinguished inside, although the quality of the recording left room for doubt. The video quickly began to be discussed precisely because of the shooting location. Here, context decides almost everything. A light over an ordinary roof would be called a glare, a bird, or a cloud. A light over Christ the Redeemer, the viewer automatically reads differently. The symbol is already in the frame, and any movement above it seems to be part of a large message, even if technically it is just optics. On the 21st of April 2021, a woman looked at the screen of a baby monitor and saw a bright ball of light in the child's room. It moved near the crib, changed direction, and lingered in such a way that it did not immediately resemble an ordinary speck of dust. The strongest moment came when the baby reached out a hand, as if trying to touch the light. At that second, the orb disappeared. For the mother, this did not look like a calm observation of a strangeness, but like a situation where something is happening near the child that she cannot control. Baby monitors often have artifacts artifacts, infrared illumination, insects, dust, reflections, but the video became popular because of the child's reaction. An adult can invent an interpretation after watching, but an infant simply reaches out to what he sees, and it is exactly this gesture that makes the frame disturbing and tender at the same time. In March 2025, a woman from Holmer Green in the United Kingdom told about a strange incident in her house. According to her words, she was interested in meditation, energy practices, and shortly before that had asked spiritual guides to give her a sign. In the evening at about 10, she entered the house and heard a distinct hello, not the noise of a pipe, not the creak of the floor, but a short human greeting. The woman stopped, started asking who was here, but no answer followed. The house, according to her words, was empty. This story differs from the others in that it shows almost nothing. What is frightening here is not the picture, but the sound. A light can be called a glare, a shadow a camera error, a cloud a coincidence. But when someone seems to greet you in an empty house, a rational explanation no longer returns the previous feeling of safety. This recording, according to the description of relatives, was made at a funeral in March 2024. The family was saying goodbye to their grandfather, and the video was filmed not for the internet, but to preserve the ceremony for those who could not come. Later, already at home, someone noticed a movement in the floral arrangement. The whole wreath and the stand were not moving. Only one small element was swaying, as if someone was carefully touching it with their fingers. The wind at that moment did not ruffle the neighboring flowers. No one passed by, and it was precisely this selectivity that made the relatives stop the recording. For a stranger, this might be a trifle, a draft, a poorly secured ribbon, floor vibration. But for the family, this gesture hit exactly the sore spot. They saw not horror, but a farewell, as if the person who could no longer be hugged found one last quiet way to say, "I am near." One of the most famous videos of this type is dated the 5th of September 2012 and is associated with a Chinese street. A night surveillance camera shows a cyclist and a truck converging on one point. The distance quickly decreases, and it seems that an accident can no longer be avoided. A fraction of a second before the impact, a figure appears in the frame. It appears with a jerk, almost like a flash. The cyclist, along with the bicycle, ends up already on the other side of the road, and the truck drives past. The driver, judging by the video, himself does not understand what happened and stops. Later, this video was often called a staged or advertising trick, too clean a rescue, too cinematic a speed. In 2013, this story was associated with the Christ the King Church in the Indian state of Kerala. During the Mass, Father Thomas Pathakal, as believers recounted, noticed an unusual spot on the consecrated host. At first, it looked like a mark on the surface, but then the outlines began to resemble a face. Parishioners came closer, prayed, someone cried. For them, it was not just a defect on the thin bread, but a sign that appeared in the very center of the rite. Later, the story was discussed as a Eucharistic miracle, although the official wording sounded more cautious. This fragment is better perceived not as a riddle of what exactly was on the host, but as a moment when the community saw the same image. Sometimes the savior in the frame does not look like a glowing figure, but like an ordinary dog. On the recording from a street camera, a little girl is walking alone along the road. A car stops nearby, the door opens, and the child, judging by the gestures, does not want to come closer. The frame is unpleasant precisely because of its everyday quietness. There is no crowd, there is no adult nearby, there is no immediate help. The girl takes a step back, the driver continues the conversation, and the situation begins to look dangerous. At this moment, a dog bursts into the frame. It flies up to the car and barks so sharply that the driver closes the door and drives away. The video does not require a supernatural explanation to work. The dog could be protecting the territory or the child it knew. But for us, another thing is more important. Help appears not a minute later, not after a scream, but exactly at the moment when a delay could have become terrible. On a night recording, a man is returning home, and a stranger sharply rushes at him from the darkness. The camera stands far away, the details are blurred, so at first we see only danger. One person does not have time to prepare, the other is already almost nearby, and then a dark jerk appears near the victim. The figure seems to separate from his body or from his shadow, makes a movement towards the attacker, and the latter loses the initiative. Everything lasts so quickly that you want to re-watch the video frame by frame. This episode has no neat solution. It could be a shadow from a lantern, a digital trace, a second person who is poorly visible, or a strange overlapping of movement. At first glance, an ordinary city camera. A woman with a stroller crosses the road. Cars are far away. The traffic seems calm. Then one car appears too quickly and the scene sharply turns from everyday to critical. The scariest thing in such videos is the feeling of mathematical inevitability. The car is flying, the woman is already on the trajectory, the stroller is in front. But at the moment when the impact seems almost decided, a blurred figure of a man flashes in the frame. Then a jump happens. The woman and the stroller are already out of danger. The video is often classified as an editing legend, and this is quite possible. Bethlehem is a place where even an ordinary filming of an icon is perceived differently. According to the story of the author, he was filming the image of Jesus during a prayer in the Church of the Nativity. The frame was calm. Candles, shadows, the surface of the image, the quiet movement of people around. Then it seemed to him that the gaze on the image changed. The eyes seemed to open, and below appeared dark, wet traces, similar to tears. A few seconds later, the image again looked motionless. The man reviewed the video and decided to post it because he himself could not understand what he had filmed. Some will call it a reflection of candles, camera shake, and pareidolia. Others, a crying image in a place where millions of people for centuries have asked for consolation. A home camera shows an ordinary morning or day. A woman is getting ready to go out. A little grandson is nearby. Everyday rush. No gloomy details. But the child suddenly clings to her as if she cannot be let go. He does not ask for a toy. He does not act capricious from a distance, but literally holds her in place. The woman smiles, tries to free herself, but the boy becomes more persistent. And almost immediately, lightning strikes right outside the door. The flash and the roar are so sharp that after them, the child's behavior ceases to look like an ordinary whim. Relatives later said that if the woman had gone out a few seconds earlier, everything could have ended differently. It is impossible to verify this, but the scene hooks with its simplicity. This video is usually described as a filming from a cave in a sacred region of the Middle East. A man walks inside with a camera, expecting to see stones, a dark passage, and traces of antiquity. But at the entrance, he notices a light that does not look like an ordinary sunbeam. The closer he gets, the more his voice changes. Deep inside, there seems to stand a human figure, but it shines so brightly that the contours blur. The camera catches overexposure, the author's breathing becomes heavier, and the filming itself begins to sound like an encounter with something for which he was not prepared. One can assume a lot: a reflection, an opening with the sun, a person in light clothing, a staging. A mother films her son in the yard. The child runs, laughs, there are trees and daylight around. Such a fragment is usually not reviewed carefully, a family video, nothing more. But later, the woman notices a translucent movement near the tree. A haze comes out of the shadow, for a second gathers into a likeness of a figure, and seems to shift following the boy. It has no clear face, no solid body, but it is precisely this uncertainty that acts stronger. This is not an object that can be easily named, but a shape between light, dust, and a silhouette. In the comments, different versions were offered: an insect near the lens, a glare, dust, even the spirit of a deceased pet. The mother spoke of something else, of a feeling. After watching, she was left not with a sense of threat, but with a strange calm, as if the child that day was playing not under an empty tree, but under someone's quiet supervision. In the area of Pinon de los Baños in Mexico, according to the descriptions of eyewitnesses, people were preparing for a traditional event on Good Friday. The attention should have been on the street, on the participants, on the earthly ceremony, but at some point the crowd began to look up. The clouds parted in such a way that the shape of a cross emerged between them. Not perfect geometry, but clear enough for people to immediately take out their phones. Light broke through the gap and the cross seemed illuminated from the inside. On a day when people remember the crucifixion, the shape of a cross appears above them. One can explain it by clouds and sun rays, but for those who stood there, the coincidence was too exact to pass by silently. A man was filming a waterfall in a remote Japanese village. According to the plot of the video, he wanted to show a beautiful place, a stream, stones, moist air, the sound of water, but at some point a dark shape appears in the very curtain. At first, it is just an unevenness in the stream. Then the gaze begins to gather it into a silhouette, as if someone bent over is standing behind the water or inside it. The camera zooms in on the image, and the figure now disappears in the splashes, now emerges again. In Japan, waterfalls are often perceived as places of purification purification and the power of nature, so viewers quickly gave the video a sacred overtone. But it is better to leave room for doubt. Perhaps it is a stone, a shadow, and water. Or perhaps such places have for centuries been considered the border between the ordinary and the invisible, precisely because sometimes nature itself takes on a human form. A recording from a home camera shows how the author's daughter returns late in the evening. The car drives into the yard, headlights glide over the walls, an ordinary end of a trip, and only after stopping do two bright shapes appear over the roof of the car. They rise smoothly, as if emerging from the space above the car, linger for a moment, and disappear into the darkness. They do not look entirely like insects. The movement is too smooth. They do not look very much like headlights either. The light source is already below, and the shapes seem to live separately. The mother, who posted the recording, called them guardian angels. And even if the viewer is not ready to accept such an explanation, emotionally it is understandable. Every parent knows the anxiety when a child returns alone at night. Therefore, two small lights over the car turn not just into a camera riddle, but into an image of protection that one wants to see. In the mountains of the Middle East, a local resident filmed several large lights over a settlement. The exact location is often lost in retellings, but the meaning of the video does not rest on the name of the village, but on the picture. Dark slopes, small houses, and glowing points hovering motionlessly over them. Eyewitnesses said that the lights looked like guards, not like random lanterns and not like moving transport, but like something that is observing from above. In a small settlement, such a frame quickly becomes a common event. It is discussed on the streets, forwarded to relatives, compared with legends. One can assume spotlights, reflections, drones, or an atmospheric effect. But for the residents, another feeling was more important. Over their place, which usually does not make the news, a sign suddenly lit up. A woman was standing on the porch and filming a thunderstorm. The camera was waiting for an ordinary, beautiful flash. A heavy sky, tense air, thunder somewhere in the distance. Lightning struck, and along with it, a glowing object appeared in the frame. When slowed down, the shape became like a silhouette with wings. Not clear, not postcard-like, but expressive enough that the author herself got scared and ran into the house. Later, she reviewed the recording and noticed that the strange image appears exactly after the flash. Rationally, this can be explained by overexposure, reflection, a plasma effect, a drop on the lens, or a feature of the camera. But a thunderstorm is always perceived as a moment when the sky becomes closer and more dangerous. Therefore, a light figure inside the lightning acts almost primally. For a second, it seems that the flash did not just illuminate the street, but revealed something beyond it. A traveler was filming a waterfall in Greece, and at first the frame looked like an ordinary tourist video. Stones, a stream, splashes, the sun at an angle. Then a light silhouette appeared in the water dust. It did not stand motionless like a statue. The shape gathered, fell apart, and arose again in the stream. For a few seconds, the water looked like a transparent figure of a person, as if someone is standing inside the curtain and manifests only with the right light. On the 9th of December 2025, as was written in the descriptions of the video, a man with his son noticed a glowing orb near the house. There were less than 3 weeks left until Christmas, and this calendar background immediately changed the perception of the video. The object floated above the ground smoothly, without sharp jerks. The child looked up, the father filmed, and the scene itself did not look frightening, but almost festive. After publication, other users began to write that they had also seen similar lights in their neighborhoods, and one video turned into a chain of small stories. Most likely, such a light has a simple explanation: a drone, a lantern, a reflection, a weather phenomenon. But in December, even an ordinary fire seems warmer. People are already waiting for a miracle. Therefore, a strange dot in the sky easily becomes not a threat, but a promise. There may still be something good ahead. A night camera films a quiet road, lanterns, empty asphalt, rare cars. Then a vertical light or translucent figure appears in the frame. At first, it looks like a person, visible only partially, and then begins to shrink and dissolve. The author of the recording said that the silhouette reminded him of a neighbor. This person used to often walk along the street at about this time, but died shortly before the appearance of the video. After such a detail, an ordinary camera defect becomes a story about a last route. It is impossible to verify the similarity. It might be the light of headlights, lights, a reflection, a matrix glitch, or a passerby distorted by night filming. But the idea itself hooks. A place continues to remember a person through his habit. A video from 2006 from Germany became viral again years later. 3 children are recording a greeting from mom. Balloons, laughter, a homeroom, nothing gloomy. Behind their backs stands a mirror, and it is precisely in it that a pale figure was later noticed. The silhouette looks light, almost winged. The children see nothing and continue to speak to the camera. A few seconds later, the mirror falls and shatters, and this moment turns a strange reflection into a full-fledged legend. Of course, the mirror could have been poorly secured. The figure could have turned out to be a reflection of a person behind the camera, a glare, or a fold of light, but the combination is too successful for calm viewing. Children, a family greeting, a strange silhouette behind the back, and the sudden crash of glass. Therefore, the video is perceived as a home recording into which something alien accidentally got. A group of friends is sitting by a campfire. Night, conversations, phone filming, an ordinary atmosphere of rest. During the recording, no one notices anything special. Already, later viewers see in the smoke above the flame a shape resembling a figure with wings. Fire constantly creates random images. One can see faces, animals, silhouettes in it. The brain likes to assemble meaning from chaos. But here, the shape holds together cohesively enough for people to start forwarding the video with the question, "Do you see this too?" A 7-year-old boy named Asher was flying on an airplane after a trip to his older brother. During the flight, he was photographing the clouds through the porthole, an ordinary childish attempt to catch a beautiful view outside the window. Later, his mom Carrie was looking through the pictures and stopped on one frame. Among the clouds was a light figure, similar to a hovering silhouette. The mother immediately perceived it as her son's guardian angel. The story became especially emotional because Asher was born with Down syndrome, and the family spoke of him as a child who himself brings a lot of light into the house. On the internet, they argued a reflection in the glass, the shape of a cloud, editing, or a lucky coincidence. But for Carrie, the picture was not proof for a court. It became a personal symbol of protection. Sometimes such frames do not need to convince the whole internet. It is enough that they answer one family. In another video, a family was filming a child after a baptism. In the frame, a church, relatives, and a calm joy after the rite. But later on the recording, they noticed a soft radiance near the baby. It appeared for a second, as if a light passed by and immediately disappeared. For some viewers, this is a glare from candles or a reflection in the lens. For the family, a sign that coincided with an important moment of the day. If such a light had appeared in a random place, it might have been forgotten. After a baptism, it turns into a story that is rewatched no longer as a strangeness, but as a blessing. In a cemetery, a little girl is standing at the grave of a loved one. Relatives film her from afar. The child speaks quietly, as if addressing someone who is no longer around. At some point, a light haze or translucent movement appears near her. The girl looks to the side and makes a small gesture, as if someone invisible is answering her. Of course, it could be light, wind, dust, or a feature of the camera. There is almost nothing scary here. There is a child, a loss, and the feeling that love sometimes looks for a way to appear even where only an inscription on a stone is left. In a hospital room, a camera records an ordinary heavy silence. A bed, equipment, dim light. But near the patient, a bright radiance suddenly appears, which does not immediately look like a lamp or a reflection. Relatives perceive this as the presence of an angel or a loved one who came to support in the most difficult moment. Skeptical versions are understandable. Glass, a device, movement off-screen, features of the camera. But in a hospital, such frames are viewed differently. Their light is important not because it explains everything, but because it helps to survive what is impossible to explain. On a road recording, a motorcyclist is riding in his lane, and at first, nothing stands out. Then a danger appears. The distance decreases. The situation in seconds turns into a possible accident. At this moment, a dark figure arises nearby. It seems to rush towards the motorcyclist or crosses his trajectory, after which the movement changes. It could be a shadow, a person, a camera artifact, or an overlapping of frames. But the video hooks because the viewer himself becomes an investigator, rewatches the moment again and again, trying to understand what exactly appeared nearby at the most necessary second. In one church video, attention was drawn to a radiance emanating from the tabernacle. A camera films the calm space of the temple, but then next to the shrine, a light appears, too precise and bright for an ordinary background. One can speak about candles, metal, glass, or the angle of shooting, but the place is important here. Light appears where believers already await the presence of the sacred. A bird flew into a room where an icon was located. Usually, such birds rush around and look for a way out, but this one approached the image and for a moment lowered its head as if it bowed before it. The people nearby froze. The movement was small but too expressive. A living creature seemed to repeat a gesture of respect where people are accustomed to praying. Perhaps the bird was simply looking for support or accidentally leaned down. But sometimes a strong scene does not need thunder and flashes. One quiet gesture is enough. That is exactly why such recordings continue to gain views. Not because they finally prove the existence of angels, spirits, or miracles, but because they leave the viewer a space between "it is just a camera" and "but what if it is not?" Perhaps some of these videos are stagings. Perhaps some are explained by light, dust, reflections, and the features of old cameras. But in each of them, ordinary life for a second shows a crack, and behind this crack appears hope, fear, memory, or a feeling that a person is not entirely alone. And now, write in the comments, which case seemed the most convincing to you? Where did you see an ordinary coincidence and where a real sign? Because sometimes the most interesting thing begins not in the video itself, but in how different people look at the same frame and see completely different worlds. Write comments, hit likes, and subscribe to Top Facts for collections of the most incredible facts and videos from all over the internet. Thank you for watching, and right now watch the previous episodes that have already appeared on your screen.